I was around 5 or 6 when this happened, and although some things are a little hard to recall, please forgive me as I attempt to translate the memories of my child self, along with what my mother and sister have told me, since the terror instilled in me from this ordeal still remains. Maybe this will prove to be therapeutic. This happened in 1990 to 91. My mother suffers from bipolar disorder and did not like to take her medication because she felt cloudy and numb on it. She's originally from Thailand, and she's always told me it's America that makes me crazy. She'd often self-medicate with booze and cigarettes. She even kept a mason jar under the sink of something red that she made herself. No idea what it was, but it smelled awful, and she called it Mummy's Kool-Aid. She told me I was not to touch it, taste it, and definitely not tell my dad. And since I was the world's pickiest eater who hardly ever saw my busy father, that was never a problem. My dad was in the military, and he would often go on TDYs out of the country, so my older sister and I were left at home with our mother, who was, for the most part, perfectly capable of caring for us. But, she had her bad days, as all parents must, complete with off-the-chart mood swings that fluctuated between laying on the couch all day to wanting to play hide-and-seek with us, and chasing anyone she found with a large kitchen knife. Typical childhood. Sometimes she'd go to Tampa for a few days to gamble or party with friends she had made, most of them also from Thailand or the Philippines. They all seemed outgoing and loud, like my mum. I watched a lot of TV when I was little and just assumed that's how real life was or should be, and no one on TV acted like my mummy, so I just thought she was a huge weirdo. I was always embarrassed at how people reacted to her, because that's how my dad and sister acted, and being so young, I didn't have much compassion or understanding. I wanted her to be like a TV mum, and it didn't help that my dad was always berating her for acting crazy and that she had to be careful while he was gone and straighten up, or the state's going to take our kids away. My dad looked down on her, and after a while, I followed his example. I can't believe I did that, and I'm totally ashamed of myself, but I can only blame my youth and ignorance. One day, I remember she was in a super good mood, but super distracted mood. She was curling her hair, putting on lipstick, jewellery, and her perfume was in the air. Offhandedly, she informed us she was going to Tampa. I was a little confused because my dad was still gone to TDY and wouldn't be back for another week, and we had school in the morning. She'd never left us when those things were going on, and I'd never had to get ready for school without my mum. Never. She even took me there on her bicycle because I could still fit into the toddler seat on the back. When she saw my panicked face, she reassured me that she just wanted to go see a friend who was having a birthday party, and that she would be back in the morning to take me to school. My sister was 8 years older than me, so she was for the most part competent enough to look after me. But I wasn't looking forward to being left with her because she bullied me. I suspect it was due to my mum always favouring the baby, me at the time, and since I was super duper small for my age, that's how everyone treated me. I should also mention that although she was a huge bully to me, my sister also had this tremendous and oftentimes irrational fear that since I was so small, I could easily be kidnapped, and she'd always drill me with questions on the daily about how to deal with strangers and what to do if anyone ever tried to take me with them. She'd even have mock drills where she'd pretend to be a stranger by wearing this awful latex mask that I fucking hated, and making me run while timing me with her stopwatch and making me do it all over if I was too slow, or tricking me and popping out of nowhere saying shit like, "Congratulations, you just got kidnapped." It was ridiculous, and I hated feeling like I always had to watch my back. I learnt later in my life that she did this because she and my mum had to thwart 2 would-be kidnappers on 2 separate occasions. Anyway, my mum drove away to Tampa and my sister watched TV while I played with my pound puppies. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. No tricks and teasing. I didn't even give her any tude when she told me to go to bed. I always slept with my closest light on and my pound puppies. After positioning them all around my pillow, I settled into bed and fell asleep. I woke up suddenly because I was being shaken roughly awake by my sister, who was hissing my name through gritted teeth. I was so confused. What time was it? Had it only been a few minutes or hours since I had come to bed? My mum always woke me up for school, but I had a clock radio by my bed that read 6 something, and although my window shades were down, I could see traces of soft blue pre-dawn. My sister pulled me out of bed and whispered furiously for me to get dressed. I was completely dismayed. Where was my mum? Why was my sister whispering? Why was she so mad? I would soon learn she wasn't mad. She was terrified. She got down on her knees so that her face was about an inch away from mine and looked right into my eyes and whispered as calmly as she could. There is a man sleeping on the couch. I'm going to take you downstairs, and I want you to run through the backyard and go to Kathy's and have her take you to school. Kathy was our neighbour. Great. After a whole night of not being timed or having to run and hide in less than 15 seconds, she was at it again. I was a big fan of rolling my eyes at this age, so that's what I did. My sister gaped at me. I informed her loudly that I didn't believe her and asked her where Mum was. She covered my mouth and whispered that Mum wasn't home. Then she walked me over to the staircase, picked me up, and we slowly descended the stairs. I realized she was trying not to make the stairs creak and craned my neck around to see into the living room, and to my satisfaction, there wasn't anyone on the couch. I looked at her triumphantly like, yeah right, who's on the couch? But she shook her head and pointed down, where the family room was by the garage and half bath, which was on a lower level of the first story, not a basement, just like down a hallway of 4 steps. After opening the door to this hallway, she put me down at the foot of these steps and mentioned for me to go forward. We had thick curtains drawn in this room, and they were an orange, white and brown floral print, so their outlines practically glowed as the sun came up behind them and as my eyes adjusted. I made out a figure on our smaller couch, who was turned away from us, facing the couch back. At first glance, I thought it was my mother because of the long dark hair and tan skin. But the hair on the back of my neck prickled as I realized this person was all balled up and seemed crammed into the couch, meaning they were a lot taller than my mum. Their shoulders were broader, and they were wearing dirty sneakers and paint-stained jeans that were loose, like a man's, because it was a man. I started shaking all over. This had never happened before, and my parents weren't here, and I had no idea what to do. My sister put her hand back over my mouth and ran me back up the stairs. She closed the door quietly and pushed the lock button on it. She had locked him down there, which made me feel a little better. I put a lot of trust into locked doors. My sister took me to the kitchen and gave me my book bag, but not my lunchbox. And as I was about to inform her of this, she opened the backyard porch door and gave me this solemn look, so I shut up. She told me to run as fast as I could, not to stop until I got there, and not to tell anyone about the man because she was going to take care of it. She helped me put on my backpack, then counted to 3, just like in all the drills she made me do, and I took off. I dodged my dogs, I unlatched the chain link gate, I ran down the back walkway towards the driveway, across the front yard, and off our property. I wasn't allowed to cross the street, but here I was, crossing it, flying across it even. I ran through other people's yards that were still wet with dew and didn't stop until I was knocking as hard as I could on Kathy's front door. Kathy opened the door in her bathrobe and her hair all messy, and I told her she had to take me to school. That's all I said. She gave me a look like, "Oh, do I now?" before letting me in. I sat in her kitchen as she offered me breakfast food I wouldn't eat and got her kids ready for daycare. I'm sure she asked me why she had to take me to school, but I can't really remember the conversation. I think I just told her that my mum wasn't home and she just left it at that. Everyone in the neighbourhood knew about my mum, mostly because she was always out in the yard, gardening and being super friendly, but they'd all had to take care of my sister and I at some point, just like my mum would take care of their kids when they went out to run errands. This was the only time in my life I felt like neighbours were just automatic friends. I went to school and didn't have a lunch, So the receptionist gave me a quarter to buy a PBJ and milk, which I didn't eat or drink, but knew I had to take so the school wouldn't look like they weren't taking care of me. Once I was talking with my friends, all recollection of the events of that morning had faded from my mind. It wasn't until after school that I remembered everything because I didn't see my mum's van waiting for me. I didn't see her on her bike or waving an umbrella at me. I didn't see Kathy or my sister or anyone that was there for me. I stood there looking and thinking I could probably walk home, but I was terrified of having to do that simply because I never had to. But more importantly, because I was always told I wasn't supposed to. There was a boy in my class with white blonde hair who lived in my neighborhood, and he was staring at me. I felt uncomfortable and turned away, trying to look like I belonged there, and that everything was okay. But I caught the attention of his father, who had been helping his younger kids onto their bicycles. "Honey, where is your mummy?" he asked. I didn't want to tell a lie, but also didn't want to confess that I didn't know. I didn't want them to know about all the weird shit that was happening, because if they told other people, or my teacher, or the police, I didn't want my mum to get in trouble, and I didn't want to get into trouble either. "Do you want to walk with us? She lives close, right?" he asked his son, who nodded. He made his son walk his bike and keep pace with me, while he watched his younger kids. I think this kid asked me where my mum was, but I didn't know what I told him or if I told him anything because I knew his dad was listening. I think I said my sister was supposed to come and get me so the issue would be minimized to an irresponsible older sibling and not all of our parental badment. I think children that are raised around the threat of impending instability are quick on their feet with their responses like that, or just play dumb. Once we got to the house, I ran up the driveway as the father watched, waiting to have responsibility relinquished, but I noticed with sinking stomach that the garage was down, which meant my mum's van was not in it, which meant my mum was not there. I froze, fearing discovery, wondering if I could just wave goodbye and go to the backyard and sit in my playhouse. But almost as if by magic, I saw my sister turning the driveway on her bicycle. The dad gave her a major disapproving side-eye. They talked a bit, and then he smiled at me, and they all waved goodbye. She ran up to me and grabbed my hand, so I followed her up to the walkway towards the stairs of our front porch, and we went into our house. She told me after she saw that I made it into the neighbors, she went back down to the family room with the biggest knife she could find. She kicked the cushions to wake this guy up, and yelled, "Who the hell are you? What are you doing in my house?" And he, seeing her towering above him with this knife, and being super disorientated, screamed in bloody terror and cowered behind some pillows. "I'm a friend of your mum's," he told her. "She told me to look after you. I folded the clothes. My sister then pointed the knife at him and told him to get up slowly. She waved at his face and told him to get out, which he was only too happy to do. He managed to unlock and pull open the sliding door in the family room, which we never used. It was too hard for anyone but my father to shut all the way, and she said the dogs jumped on him, trying to be friendly. But he just thought they were going to attack him, so he picked up the pace as he climbed over the chain link fence and disappeared. After locking everything up, so she thought, my sister said the phone rang and it was her mother. She said Mum sounded drunk and asked her if we'd met her friend, and my sister flipped out on her. Her mother could not understand why she was so upset and explained that she was driving a few friends home when she met a real-life Seminole walking down the road, so they pulled over and harassed him long enough to find out he didn't have a place to stay that night. So being in a super good mood, and since she loves making new friends, my mum told her he could stay at her house, but he had to fold some laundry and watch her kids, so she could stay out and keep partying. He agreed. She let him in through the garage, told him where to find the basket of laundry, and told him there is some beers in the fridge, but not to go up to the second story. My sister said she said it like, well, I told him not to go upstairs, like that ensured our safety or something. I wish I could end the story on a happy note, because that right there seems like a great place to end it. It's kinda light and funny even, but sadly, no. That weekend, my sister asked to sleep over at her friend's, and my mum let her. She always let us do stuff like that, and she was being extra nice to us. I guess because of what had happened earlier that week. She even told me I could have someone sleep over, so I called all my friends from best to worst around 8-9 PM and invited them to come sleep over, and though I expected they would all jump at the chance, sadly, one by one, their parents all said no. I kept trying to come up with more girls in my class that I could call until my mum told me it was too late and past my bedtime, so I made my way up the stairs, full of the pouts. She asked me if I wanted to sleep in her room and have a sleepover with her, but I just whined no as mean as I could and got ready for bed. All the energy I was putting into being a huge brat must have been exhausting because I fell asleep immediately. I woke up with a start because my dogs were barking in the backyard. I remember I opened my eyes and I instantly felt strange. It was pitch black. That shouldn't be. My closet light was always on. Always. Sometimes my dad would turn it off before he left for work early in the morning, but I always woke up and turned it back on, even if the sun was almost up and I could see around in my room. When I was in bed, the closet light was on. Period. Besides, it was not early in the morning this time and my dad was not home. I got super pissed. Who turned out my light? I stared into the black until my eyes adjusted enough that I saw the darker black rectangle of my open bedroom door. I always left my door wide open, but in the dark it looked like it was opening into a void and anything or nothing was just through it. My anger faded and I started to shake. I decided to leave the safety of my covers, walk over to my closet and flip the switch back on. That would set everything right. I made my way over to the closet, felt around on the wall until I felt the switch and flipped it. Nothing happened. I flipped it off, then on again. Repeat, nothing. It was still dark. I noticed my clock radio wasn't on either, and the lamppost by our mailbox wasn't emitting any light through my window shade either. My hopes sank as I came to the realization that the electricity was out. It wasn't storming, so it must be the breaker box. I knew it was outside because I would run a bath and the water would stay cold, so my dad would go outside to the backyard to wherever the thing was and flip it for me. I instantly regretted not sleeping in my mum's room and was deciding whether or not to be brave and feel my way down the hall to it. But I never had a chance to do this because suddenly I heard thumping, like someone was trudging around downstairs. If it was Christmas Eve, I would have been stoked, but it wasn't, and I knew that wasn't Santa. Maybe it was my mum trying to turn the electricity back on, but that seemed unlikely somehow. I backed away from my closet toward the foot of my bed, where I kept all my big stuffed animals propped up against it and sat on top of them until my weight shifted them back and sank into them. I felt safer having them all around me, and only my head peeped through. I reached up my bed and pulled the covers down so they hung over the edge, covering my head so I could just peek through. If you walked into my room, my bed would be in the far right corner, and the closet would be directly across from it on the same wall as the door. The door swung open to the right, so where I was, I couldn't see down the hallway anymore, but I could see a crack of black by the hinges. I heard the trudging get louder until it was coming up the stairs. Once you got to the top, you could either go left to the bathroom and my parents' room, or right towards my sister's room or my room. I wondered where this person would go, and I noticed there was a movement through the hinge crack coming towards my room, so I held my breath and closed my eyes tight. Whoever it was came in slowly, as if they weren't sure about their surroundings. I heard them stop and then move over to my bed. I smelled something like Mummy's Kool-Aid, and I heard them grab my pillow, then toss it toward the closet. I know because it hit me in the head, and then tumbled to the floor. The pound puppies must have gone flying because I heard the soft pit-pat of them landing around me, and after a pause that seemed to last forever, but was probably more like 15 seconds, whoever it was walked out and went into my sister's room, shutting her door behind them. My first reaction was to run to my mum's room, but I was scared this person would soon discover the room was empty and come out quickly, so I got up and looked down the hallway. I heard something faintly down at the end, so I ducked down by my rocking chair. From this vantage point, I was able to see directly down the hallway, but I couldn't really see anything down it at all. It was just a big black space. I always threw all my clothes on this rocking chair, so I got down low under where they draped and stared in front of me. I remember feeling the strain of my eyes dilating, not knowing that's what they were doing, as I watched the black rectangle of my doorway change ever so slightly. There was something darker, something moving towards me. It was close to the ground, and sounded like a scurrying animal crawling on all fours, but I knew it was deceptively small in its posture, and all I could do was stare in horror as it came closer and closer. This thing that was darker than the dark. I watched as it crawled over to my bed, and heard it as it felt all over the sheets and covers. My teeth started chattering as I realized it was searching for me. It started feeling around on the floor, under the bed, touching my stuffed animals, and as it got closer, I let out a small gasp. It stopped and turned towards me. Suddenly, I felt a hand on my face, another on my shoulder, and someone was pulling me out from under the drapes of my clothing and pulling me against them, holding me. They were shaking too, and I realized it was my mother. She knew her way around our house in the dark, and suddenly we were gliding down the stairs and out of the front door into the cool night air, running across the yard in our pajamas to our next door neighbours, who let us in and called the cops. My mum wouldn't let me go outside with her while she talked to the police, but told me later the guy, her friend, who my sister had kicked out, had returned because he was furious at her for being unforgivably rude, and my mum, who he felt had cheated him out on their deal. He knew our dad wasn't home, and since our breaker box was located outside, he'd managed to turn off our power, come back in through the sliding door my sister hadn't managed to lock, thinking he'd scare us and make my mum apologise or something. That's what my mum told us that the police told her. She said that when they pulled him out and handcuffed him, he kept repeating, "But I fold the clothes." She still, to this day, tries to make it into a joke by imitating him while my sister and I cringe. Although lately, I find myself wanting to laugh with her. Maybe someday I will. I'm thankful that no one was hurt and that my dad installed a security system and got a breaker box lock. But unfortunately afterwards he hospitalised my mum and told her she had to take her medication every day or he'd leave her in there. She agreed, but they ended up divorced 5 years later, and it took me my entire childhood before I could understand and forgive them. I'm still working on learning how to forgive myself, but I imagine a lot of people are in the same boat as me. Looking back on that time now, I am so relieved my sister wasn't home, because who knows what the hell that guy had planned. Well, that was an epic story. If you liked it, guys, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe, of course. And stay tuned, because stories like these will come your way. Alright guys, thanks for watching, of course.